Have you ever wondered how some of the biggest names in rock music manage to release albums so terrible they make fans cringe to this day? Well, grab your headphones and prepare yourself, because today we're diving deep into the world of legendary rock bands who somehow dropped complete musical disasters. We're talking production nightmares, bizarre artistic choices, and albums that made loyal fans question their devotion. These are the records that got buried in collections, the ones artists refused to acknowledge, and the strange missteps that even rock gods couldn't avoid. So if you've ever wanted to feel better about your own mistakes, sit tight as we count down the 10 worst rock albums of all time. Number 1, Guns N' Roses' Chinese Democracy. After 15 years of waiting, countless millions spent, and an ever-revolving door of band members, what fans got was hardly worth the wait. Axl Rose's magnum opus turned massive disappointment arrived in 2008, feeling both overproduced and undercooked. The album drowns in layers of industrial effects, odd electronic elements, in songs that feel pieced together rather than organically created. Fun fact, by the time Chinese Democracy was released, Axl was the only original member left in the band. The album reportedly cost over $13 million to produce, making it one of the most expensive rock albums ever made. Chinese Democracy stands as a monument to excess, ego, and what happens when an artist loses perspective. From one expensive disaster to another band's creative meltdown, our journey through musical missteps continues. Number 2, Metallica, Saint Anger.
In the unlikely event that you are taken hostage, the state will not negotiate your release.
This album is infamous for all the wrong reasons. Following a period of intense turmoil involving addiction struggles, therapy sessions, and near breakups, Metallica aimed to return with raw honesty and aggression. What they delivered instead was an album plagued by that notorious trash can snare drum sound, a complete absence of guitar solos, and lyrics that read like therapy journal entries. Fun fact, Lars Ulrich's widely hated snare drum sound was deliberate. He wanted something primal and unhinged, but it became one of the most ridiculed drum sounds in rock history. Despite debuting at number 1 on the charts, Saint Anger quickly became a punchline among fans and a strange blemish on their legacy. While Metallica at least had internal demons to blame, sometimes even the coolest bands just make terrible decisions, as our next entry proves. Number 3, The Rolling Stones' Dirty Work. Even rock royalty stumbles sometimes, and Dirty Work represents the Stones at their most dysfunctional. Behind the scenes, Mick Jagger and Keith Richards barely spoke, with rumors suggesting that Jagger had recorded most of the vocals without even being in the same room as the band. The album sounds like a bad 1980s experiment, drenched in cheesy synthesizers and songs that feel like afterthoughts. Fun fact, even the cover art, featuring bright pastel colors with the band awkwardly posing, revealed a complete identity crisis. Keith Richards later described the recording sessions as torture. And this stands as the low point in a career otherwise filled with rock and roll excellence. From band conflicts to misguided collaborations, sometimes 2 wrongs definitely don't make a right. Number 4, Lou Reed and Metallica, Lulu.
I am a chorus of the voices that gather up the man.
When 2 musical titans collaborate, you'd expect greatness. Instead, we got Lulu, perhaps the most baffling album on this list. This bizarre experiment featured Lou Reed performing spoken word poetry over Metallica's grinding metal riffs. The result was jarring, disjointed, and uncomfortable to listen to.
Now me, trying to feel your trick.
Fun fact, despite universal mockery, Lars Ulrich stubbornly defended the album by claiming listeners just didn't get it. The album represents a perfect storm of artistic indulgence and creative disconnection, proving that sometimes Great artists simply should not collaborate. Bad collaborations can sink a project, but so can ill-advised genre experiments, as we see with our next legendary band. Number 5, Queen Hot Space. The legendary band's infamous disco detour turned them from "We will rock you" to "We will funk you," and fans were decidedly not impressed. Inspired by Freddie Mercury's love of dance music, Hot Space went all in on synth funk, abandoning the band's rock roots. The result was a confused hybrid that alienated their core rock audience. Fun fact, Under Pressure with David Bowie is the album's only undisputed classic, essentially keeping the entire project afloat. Queen actually refused to play most songs from this album live after the tour ended. That's how much they recognized it missed the mark. From one band's dance floor disaster to metal pioneers trying desperately to stay relevant. Number 6, Black Sabbath, Forbidden. Sabbath without Ozzy is one thing, but Sabbath with Tony Martin on vocals and rapper Ice-T making a guest appearance? Forbidden was the band's misguided attempt to modernize their sound, resulting in a bizarre and forgettable album. The production was flat, the riffs uninspired, and the songs simply didn't connect. Fun fact, even guitarist Tony Iommi has admitted it represents the band's absolute low point. Sadly, it was the last full-length studio album before the original lineup finally reunited, serving as a painful reminder that even the inventors of heavy metal could lose their way. Speaking of losing their way, our next band faced a similar identity crisis when they gambled on a new frontman. Number 7, Van Halen, Van Halen III. After parting ways with both David Lee Roth and Sammy Hagar, Van Halen recruited Gary Cherone from Extreme as their new vocalist. What followed was a bizarre experiment that left fans confused and disappointed. The band's signature sound became unrecognizable, with catchy riffs replaced by overlong, unfocused songs and oddly dark lyrics. Fun fact, Eddie Van Halen played bass guitar and piano on most tracks, making it feel more like his personal project than a true band effort. Even Cherone later admitted the collaboration simply didn't work, making this the Van Halen album fans pretend doesn't exist. From hard rock confusion to folk rock rebellion, sometimes artists deliberately try to alienate their audience. Number 8, Bob Dylan, Self-Portrait. Coming off a streak of genius albums in the 1960s, Dylan released this confounding double LP that left fans bewildered. Filled with odd cover versions, syrupy arrangements, and flat vocals, Self-Portrait felt more like random demos than a proper Dylan release. Fun fact, he later admitted he was intentionally trying to throw people off and get rid of the people hanging on. The very first track doesn't even feature Dylan's vocals, just female singers repeating the same line over orchestration. Legendary critic Greil Marcus famously began his Rolling Stone review with the simple question, "What is this?" Zrania, perfect capturing the confusion this album created. From an intentional artistic detour to the painful death of a legendary group, our next entry shows how bands sometimes end with a whimper. Number 9, The Clash, Cut the Crap. After firing virtually everyone in the band, Joe Strummer attempted to continue under the Clash name with session musicians, and the results were disastrous. Cut the Crap features cheap synthesizers, robotic drum machines, and songs that sound like pale imitations of better Clash tracks. Gone was the rebellious fire that defined the band. Fun fact, the album was so universally disliked that the band didn't even include it in later reissues or box sets. essentially erasing it from their official history. Finally, we wrap up our musical Hall of Shame with rock legends who simply ran out of creative steam. Number 10, The Who, It's Hard. By the time this album was released, The Who were running on fumes. Pete Townshend had already begun focusing on his solo career. Drummer Keith Moon was gone, and the magic that defined their classic period had largely disappeared. The album feels like a band simply going through the motions, drowning in overproduction, and lacking the edge that made The Who special. Fun fact, Townshend didn't even want to tour the album, but was convinced to do so, only to quit the band immediately after the tour concluded. While not terrible in the way some albums on this list are, for creators of masterpieces like Who's Next and Quadrophenia, it represented a noticeable drop in quality and inspiration. So there you have it, 10 legendary rock acts who proved that even the greatest musicians can hit some seriously sour notes. Nobody bats 1,000, right? But these spectacular failures make us appreciate their successes even more. Perhaps there's something strangely comforting about knowing that rock gods can fail, just like the rest of us. And who knows? Maybe some of these musical disasters will find new appreciation decades later, as sometimes today's flop becomes tomorrow's misunderstood masterpiece. Which terrible album by your favorite band would you add to this list? And be honest, do you secretly enjoy any of these notorious rock disasters? Keep spinning those classics, and maybe, just maybe, give one of these infamous albums another chance. Or not. Rock on.